In this video, we're gonna be doing a full walk around of the S sitting behind me because after about 4+ years of ownership, I'm finally ready to start throwing some parts at this car and changing some things up and switching some things around and tracking some progress and really turning this car into something unique. So in this video, I want to get a really clear snapshot for how the car is sitting currently, and then later in the video, we can talk about build plans and where I think this thing is headed. So if this is your first video, this is my 2007 Grand Prix White Honda S2000, and I guess I hate to say it's my dream car because that term just doesn't mean a lot these days, but as far as what I can afford and where I'm at in life and what matters to me from like an owner's perspective and what I'm into and kind of what I'm about, this car is hands down the perfect car for me right now. So I'll give you a walk around of the outside. I guess we'll start on the front end. Super happy with these. So these are the OEM headlights that came standard on the S2000 from 2004 and up. This is a 2007 model, like I said, and these lights particularly have 100,000 miles on them, which is pretty insane. So believe it or not, these are the original lights, and they look really good because I was able to sand them down and completely re-clear coat the entire headlight, so it's not just a quick cut and polish that a lot of people seem to get away with. I didn't want to go that route, so I'll leave a link on screen if you want to check out what the restoration process is like, because I'm super proud of how these came out and super juiced on it. I was going to buy new headlights, to be honest with you. I was kind of looking for reasons to buy new headlights, but the way these turned out, there's like no need almost. So stock body, zero factory aero, which I actually love. I love the humble nature and kind of look of a stock bodied S2000. I think that they're kind of understated overall, but that's going to be changing here pretty soon, so please stay tuned for that if you're interested. So this car was really clean when I got my hands on it at about 90,000 miles, but I've never had a garage my whole life, so this car's been living outside since I've owned it, and I daily drive it. So life for this girl has been pretty hard the last couple of years, but I do my best to keep up with her and kind of give her what she needs, when she needs it. Aesthetically, there are a couple of issues with the car. It's got a couple of door dings here and there, and I'd like to get those out at some point. Some paint issues that I'd like to get corrected as well, but as far as, I don't know, overall condition, it's pretty good, I would say. But that's just kind of the price that we pay for daily driving a car like this, right? A big score when I got the car originally was the soft top. So this is a Robbins brand cloth soft top. This was replaced a couple of years ago, just before I bought the car. So it's not original, but it still looks a lot darker and kind of richer than OEM, which I'm a fan of. It's very kind of Porsche-esque. So I really like the way that this top came out. There are a couple of service-related issues I ran into just from sheer mileage. The car has over 120,000 miles on it these days, so I'm gonna make a whole nother video reviewing the drivetrain and sort of service-related stuff and parts that I've had to replace up until now and that sort of thing, so watch out for that. I'll link it on screen by the time that video goes live, if it is by the time you're watching this one. So that is the exterior. Go over the wheels really quick. So these are an OEM set of 5 spokes. So these came standard on the 08, 09 models. So this is actually a set of base model wheels that I had refinished in washy gray, if you know anything about paint codes. Washy gray was the color code pulled from the original NSX Type R wheels. So these wheels are technically the same color as those wheels. So I'm really happy with the way these turned out. I refinished them myself, learned a lot during that process. They're wrapped in a 200 treadwear Dunlop Dureza Z3 tire. It's a 225 up front and a 255 in the rear, so about 10 millimeters wider per corner. So these are supposed to be a little bit more aggressive. I honestly kind of did it for aesthetic reasons because I really like the kind of meaty sidewall tire look. So these are pretty cool. I think that they're supposed to be a little bit more grippy, from a sizing standpoint versus stock, but I don't drive the car hard enough to know, what that level of grip is, but I'd like to. It's kind of the point of the channel. I've been driving a lot more often because of this, so really stoked about that. So yeah, kind of Type R vibe, especially with the vented hood. I guess I haven't talked about this yet. So this is a Buddy Club Japan dry carbon aero hood, and I'm super happy with this thing, dude. This is literally like one of, if not my favorite pieces of this car that I might ever own. So it's a carbon part. It was painted over completely, so it's, obviously color matched to the car. It's a vented hood. It is functional, so these vents do go into the engine bay. So the car's been parked for not too long, so I can actually feel there's like heat coming from the vent. It's like on my hand right now. can hear it's got like that carbon sound to it. So it's really, really cool. So getting into the interior of the car, I personally really love the interior on the car. It's just really minimalistic. It's super ergonomic. Even despite its 20-plus-year-old design, it still feels very current, and it's kind of just got everything you need right where you need it and nothing where you don't. I'm not really big a fan of like the red these days. I just think it looks kind of busy, and I'm actually more a fan of like just a really nice neutral interior. If this was all black, I would like it way more. But you know, I was really juiced on it at one point, so I guess it's cool that it's there. I have the option to switch out, which I do plan on doing. I have pretty big interior plans for this car. We'll talk maybe more about that later on. There are two top favorite things for me in the interior that I'll show you now. So let me jump in here super quick. And the first favorite thing of mine would have to be the shifter. It's pretty well reviewed at this point as being one of the best shifters out there. So what I've done actually is I've swapped out the shift knob, and I've fitted an FD2R shift knob, which is an OEM part out of a Honda Civic Type R, along with a matching shift collar, which is like this guy right here. So it just kind of increases the fit and finish of the shifter, and I think it looks super good. I know a lot of guys are like big into like heavier shift knobs, but I actually like the lighter knobs. This knob is actually lighter than stock. Heavier knobs can kind of muffle what the transmission is doing, and it makes the shifting experience just kind of more severe, which I'm not really into. So lastly, a custom shift boot has been designed to be taller and kind of sit higher on the shaft. So I'm super happy with how this thing looks. It's real leather, and it just kind of, you know, increases like that fit and finish I was talking about. So I think it makes the interior look really, you know, nicely put together, and it almost feels like it coulda and maybe even shoulda came like this from factory. So cool, dude. I love the little startup kind of motion. So the last favorite thing for me would have to be the gauge cluster. A lot of mid to late 90s sports cars used fighter jets as inspirations for their cockpit and kind of cluster designs, but the way the S2000 executes on this is so cool, and I think it's kind of aged the best in my opinion, with the digital speedo and the tack that stretches all the way across, you know, the face of the display. I think it's really timeless by now. So let me actually turn the car on and I'll give you a quick rev. It's almost hard to believe I've made it this far without ever actually changing anything on the car, but I mean, it's just been so good out of the box for so long that it kind of almost never needed it, if that makes sense. And I guess I should say that my priority has always been driving. If you were to ask me, you know, would you rather spend an afternoon working on the car, wrenching on it, or would you rather, you know, take it out for a spin? I would say give me the keys, right? Because that's just kind of what matters to me. I mean, wrenching on the car, changing it, you know, personalizing it, like that is super cool. Like there's no question, but I don't know, like driving to me is just number one, but that's gonna change pretty soon. So let's talk build plans. So I've always been in love with the idea of building what I can only describe as like a JDM GT3 or GT4 inspired like rocket ship of a street car that kind of lives a double life in the mountains and has, you know, no problems keeping up on track. I know I'm gonna be keeping this car NA. I've never really thought about throwing a turbo or a supercharger at it, honestly, and I'm super happy with the power that this car makes NA, and if I wanted a turbo, I'm just work hard and buy a car that has a turbo in it. So I know I wanna keep the car stock bodied. I know that I don't need over fenders or anything like that. So it'll be a pretty mild build aesthetically, I guess. I do wanna do aftermarket front end, maybe bumpers, wheels, tires, exhaust, you know, kind of all of those, you know, basic, I guess, bolt-ons. But what I'm planning on putting together is like a few different versions of the car that I'm gonna be separating into like stages, I guess. So I know the YouTube world is kind of weird when it comes to car building, because it's kind of like, all right, you buy a car, you throw, you know, a shitload of parts at it, and then, you know, it's kind of done. You know, as people, we grow up and we age and we change, and like preferences and tastes kind of shift, and you learn, you know, and you kind of adapt and stuff, and your car honestly, I mean, if you're as into it as I am, is kind of a reflection of like all of those like kind of changing things. So I really like the idea of building like different stages of this car, and then just kind of watching it sort of develop through the years, right? So I'm gonna be building, what I'm putting together are a couple of stages that I think will be really cool to kind of separate the development of the car in. I hope that that is interesting to you. I hope that like you're hearing this and you're like, okay, cool, like that sounds like pretty legit. I'm doing it for myself, but you know, I'm putting it out on the internet because I think someone else might enjoy it. So I'm gonna be sourcing the right parts that I think kind of best match the time period that this car is being developed in. So kind of mid to like late 2000s. As far as parts go, the cool thing about the S is that, you know, even 20 years later today, after, you know, the debut, there are still companies making new parts for this car, which is great because a lot of those companies have like really modern, you know, products that kind of keep this car sort of at like the highest level of like, you know, mid-tier sports cars because of just like modern engineering and like, you know, newer, I guess, improvements in manufacturing and like those types of crazy things. What I really want is for this car to be kind of like a modern mix between, you know, period correct elements while also kind of using, you know, just like better design. One part of this build that I really want to emphasize, and I can tell you that I'm going to be doing ahead of time, is suspension. I really want to emphasize the suspension on this car because the way that this car is set up and balanced is so special, and it's like a really big part of what makes this car so unique and iconic. So I really want to do everything I can to improve on that without upsetting the total balance of the car. That's like a big goal of mine. I really want to make this handle like an absolute beast. So that concludes the walk around. Now you kind of have a better idea as to what like my inspiration is and where I'm headed with this car and sort of what you kind of have to expect from this channel as a whole. So I hope that that kind of brings a little bit of clarity and sort of gets you a little bit more into the loop as far as what's coming. Yeah, so again, thank you for making it this far into the video. If you did, I'm stoked for this, man. You know, I'm gonna learn a lot. There's gonna be a lot of trial and error. There are gonna be a lot of mistakes. Hopefully, no, there's gonna be a lot of mistakes. I'm gonna call it right now, but I'm stoked for it. I'm stoked for it. I'm here for it. It's gonna be cool, and I hope that you are stoked for this. So again, thank you for making it this far into the video. If you did, I'll catch you in the next one.